Hi, I'm Ruben Saltzman with StructureTech Home Inspections, and today I'm going to share with you everything I know about buried fuel oil tanks. This shouldn't take long. No, but seriously, the topic of fuel oil tanks is kind of a big one because from a home inspection perspective, this is something that we try to tell our clients about when we come across it. Now, home inspection standards of practice don't require home inspectors to say anything about fuel oil tanks. I mean, whether they're freestanding or they're buried in the home, standards of practice don't require us to report on these things. But this is basically a standard of care for home inspectors where if we see something and we know what it is, we're going to tell our client about it. We're not just going to brush over evidence of an abandoned fuel oil tank and not talk about it. So to start off, why does this matter? Well, when you have an abandoned fuel oil tank buried in the ground, there's a potential that that tank could leak. And if it does leak fuel oil, it's an expensive proposition to clean it up. Now, there's funds out there, there's programs out there to help homeowners recoup a lot of the costs for cleaning up spilled fuel oil, but whether the homeowner ultimately has to pay for all of it or just some of it, no matter what it is, it's something that nobody wants to have to take on and deal with when they buy a home. So most people kind of rely on the home inspector to let them know if there's a fuel oil tank at the property. So what does a fuel oil tank look like? There's basically two styles of tanks out there. One is the indoor tank, and that's going to be a freestanding tank. It's typically going to be a 275-gallon tank. I've seen them in 265-gallon versions. If you have one of those and it's abandoned, it depends on what city you live in to decide what you need to do with it. Now, if you're in the city of Minneapolis, for their Truth and Sale of Housing Evaluation program, they don't allow you to leave any abandoned fuel oil tank on the property. For their city inspection, and I am a licensed evaluator in the city of Minneapolis, so I know their guidelines. For their evaluation program, if I come across an abandoned fuel oil tank, it needs to be removed. That is in the Truth in Housing guidelines. And someone's either going to need to pull a permit or I'm going to need to come back out and make sure it was properly done. There's no requirement for a permit when something is under 200 gallons. However, I've never in my life found a fuel oil tank that was under 200 gallons. They're all over that, kind of implying you need to pull a permit. So I'm usually not the one who comes back out to sign off on this stuff. It's going to be somebody else. So in the city of Minneapolis, it certainly matters. When you're in other cities, a lot of the time it doesn't matter if it's an abandoned freestanding tank inside the home. A lot of the time you can just let those things go. Now, it's an annoyance. Nobody buying a house wants to have this big tank stuck in their basement. So what do you do with it? Well, if you can get it out in one piece, you can sell it on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. If you can't get it out in one piece, you're going to have to cut it up, and then it's basically useless. Oh, and side note, if you'd like to decorate your yard and you don't want to sell it on Craigslist, you could actually bring it out in your yard and you could dress it up like a cow. And I say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I'm actually also kind of serious because I've seen this done many times. So if you don't see a freestanding tank, what else could it be? Well, you could have a buried fuel oil tank. And the clues that I'm looking for as a home inspector is it's typically going to be the fill pipe and the vent pipe. And it's two similar pipes coming up either out of the ground or out of the foundation wall. Now, if there's two pipes coming right next to the foundation wall, it's probably that you had a freestanding tank in the basement, but it could be a tank buried in the yard. If you have two pipes in the yard, kind of separated from each other, pulled away from the house a little bit, it's almost a guarantee that you have a buried fuel oil tank. I mean, it's either that or somebody went way out of their way into fooling you into thinking that there's a buried fuel oil tank. And I just don't know why anybody would do that. So you see two pipes sticking up out of the ground somewhere, you can be pretty certain that you've got a buried fuel oil tank. And to know for certain, I mean, the best way is probably going to be to call a company that specializes in that. Here in the Twin Cities, there's one company I know of that just does a ton of that. They've done a lot of continuing education for us home inspectors. The name of that company is Dean's Tanks. But that's a local thing. If you're somewhere else and you want to know whether there's a buried fuel oil tank, or even if you're in the Twin Cities, I asked them, what do you guys do to verify the presence of a tank? Like when I refer your company, I mean, I'm assuming you're coming out with some high-tech tool like the Tank Locator 3000 or something, and you aim it at the ground and it confirms the presence of a tank. What do you use and where can I get one? Because I need to be able to start confirming these for myself. And they told me, oh yeah, it's real simple. All we do is you put your ear to one and then you get like a wrench or something or a hammer and you bang on the other pipe and you listen and you can hear this echoey sound. It's like you know that there's a buried tank there. And it worked like a charm. I've got a video of Jeff doing that here.
Smells like victory.
Yeah, what I think Jeff meant to say is it smells like fuel oil, but I get your point, Jeff. That great video. Thanks for putting that together. And what Jeff had seen, what made him clue in on this was these subtle little pipes sticking up out of the ground. And you know, it would have been easy to miss. If it was wintertime, they probably would have been buried in snow and there's no way we would have caught this. Or if there had been heavier plantings around there, there's no way we would have found this. And so that's why our home inspection standards of practice protect us. They say we are not required to find this stuff. But again, if we can, we're going to identify it. So that's a good way of kind of confirming it, is do a little banging on the pipes. Once it's been confirmed that there really is a buried fuel oil tank, something needs to be done with it. And there's two possibilities. One of those is to have the tank removed. That's always the best option. If the tank can be removed, that's what should be done. And the buried tanks are going to be big. It's not the little 275-gallon tank that I talked about at the beginning of this video. They're going to be huge. They're going to be 1,000 gallons or larger. That's what gets buried in the yard. So if they're going to come out and dig it up, it's a big project. You got to take it out, fill that back in with dirt, and then cover it back over. Tanks can sometimes be filled in place. It's not the best option. To fill a tank in place, they actually need to dig it all up, open the tank up, suck all the soil out, suck all the oil out of there, and then do soil testing underneath the tank to make sure that it hasn't leaked. And so that means they got to cut the bottom of the tank open and then take dirt samples underneath. Once they've confirmed that nothing has leaked and the soil is still good, then they can fill the tank in place. And it used to be standard practice to fill them with sand. Today they need to be filled in with foam. So you probably wouldn't expect to save any money by filling a tank in place, but it is an option if structural conditions or landscaping conditions would make it so that you can't get any type of big machinery in there, or it wouldn't make sense to dig up a big section of the yard. So that's what you do if an abandoned fuel oil tank is found. And if a tank is still in use, which is really unusual here in the Twin Cities, well, then there's really nothing to be done. From a home inspection perspective, I would simply say it's still in use, and I guess I'd leave it at that. I'd say that I couldn't inspect it because it's buried in the ground. But I think I've run across probably less than half a dozen of those in my entire home inspection career. Here in the Twin Cities, we're on natural gas. Fuel oil tanks are pretty unusual. So that's, I think that's about everything I know about fuel oil tanks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.